Can't be in a conversation without talking about LinkedIn to the point
Okay.
where anyone thinking they want to be an entrepreneur at some point, or even they are now, to leverage LinkedIn. It's the one platform for professional and business purposes. Leverage
Mm.
the platform is my biggest thing. Sometimes I get clients who wait until they're at the point of frustration where they may have to close their business. And it's like,
Mm.
no, you should have connected with me a long time ago. So making
Mm.
sure that they're leveraging the platform and then guarding their time.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that has built several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder of and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. And if you ever need any help with us, just go to strategymeeting.com and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Clarence Mitchell. Clarence? No? You say
No,
no. What is the name? How did I mispronounce it?
you put an extra C in there, but I'm gonna still like you, Devin. It's Clarene.
All right, Clarene, and I apologize. My mind put the C in there, and it was just, I'm like, then you're like, no, I'm like, oh no, I already messed it up. So,
Everyone, not everyone, a lot of people just do it by default because I have such an uncommon name, but I am a woman, a female. There's no
after I said it, I'm like, well, the thing I always think of is Clarence Thomas, which is on the Supreme Court, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So Clarene Mitchell, and now we'll dive into a quick intro, and then we'll keep going. So Clarene was a non-traditional college student. Was, I think you mentioned, a mother of 3 that was on welfare. Went to college, changed the direction of your family, get off welfare, and kind of create that future for the family and for the next generation. Got a communications degree. Went and worked for a nonprofit for a period of time, was a journalist as a side hustle, did a whole bunch of nonprofits, worked for them for a period of time, and then about 3 years ago decided to kick off your own entrepreneurial journey when you got lost your job or unemployed, and then you decided to go all in, and that's where it brought you to where you're at today. So there's
yeah.
my quick introduction to Clarene, and welcome onto the podcast.
Thank you so much, Devin. So nice to be here with you.
So I gave maybe a brief introduction, but let's take you back in time again and talk a little bit about, when you were a mother of 3, kind of on welfare, decided to go to college, change your trajectory, and how that led to where you're at today.
Oh, wow. That's a story. Let's see. Uh, so I'm in the greater Milwaukee area. And as you mentioned, I was on welfare. At the time, actually, I had 2 children, but during the course of even a semester before graduating, had another pregnancy. So I had to take off from school, but went back and finished my degree. But wanting better for my life and the life of my children. And a quote from Malcolm X really was my pushing point.
Mm.
Education is the passport to the future, is the quote.
Mm.
And knowing that me getting my education, me getting not just a certificate or some program, but a college degree would help me change the future of myself and my children. And so,
Mm.
being a single mother of 3, by the time I graduated from college, I joke sometimes that I chuckle at the fact that during my graduation, I was tired.
Mm.
Like, I wasn't bored and dozing because it was boring, as graduations typically are. I was just tired life and the journey that it took for me to get my college degree. So it
Mm.
was a happy occasion. It was a celebratory occasion, but I was
Mm.
tired and I was ready to move on to the next phase of my life. But yeah,
So one
education.
question on that, because it's an interest. And first of all, I completely get being tired. I was completely different, but when I was in school for graduate school, I had a one kid that was under 1 years old. I had a second child that was on the way. I was doing 2 degrees at the same time. I was working a 20-hour job, and that's when I did my first startup. So I'm right there with you, being tired
Okay,
and
I'm tired from
understanding.
just hearing what you said.
So I was commiserating with him, like, I get what being tired is. And you're like, I'm not falling asleep in class because I don't find it interesting. I'm just tired. So,
Right, exactly.
But one question I had is, and I think it was commemorable, and I like the quote, education is the path to, and I can't remember,
My
success
passport
or
to the future.
passport to the future. So, what was that trigger maybe going back is, how did you kind of saying, your mother three on welfare, and you're saying, hey, this is my passport. I'm going to change my future. What was kind of the trigger? How did you make that decision, that dive? Because, it's not, it does take a lot of effort to get into school, especially when you're, later in life, you have kids, you have responsibilities. So what was kind of that trigger and said, I'm going to do this?
Oh, wow. I don't think it was just one point in my
Mm,
life. It was just the totality of my life prior to that, and
mm,
always wanting better.
mm,
Even prior to history with domestic violence, relationships, and being a survivor, and always wanting to just get to a better place.
mm,
Even childhood wise, and just struggles in childhood poverty and just other issues, wanting better, wanting more, and knowing that there was more out there. So how
mm,
to get that and get it for myself and my children. And again, the degree, starting that process. I'm still striving for more every day.
mm.
that
Right there
hasn't
with you.
that hasn't stopped wanting to achieve more, but it all began because actually, so I dropped out of high school because I was a teen
Mm,
pregnant because of teen pregnancy.
mm,
So went back, got my GED, so general
mm,
education diploma. But
mm,
that again, not being enough, it was a starting point. I didn't want to just be stuck in fast food or low
mm,
end pay wage jobs.
mm,
That wouldn't be enough. So got the college degree, and then actually recently this past summer was able to complete a program through Cornell University, an entrepreneurship, women's entrepreneurship program. And
mm.
so that pathway from dropout, college drop, high school dropout, to being able to have a Cornell certificate that I can have on my wall, maybe one day an actual diploma, but it's still, I cherish it just as much as anyone would cherish any kind of
Mm,
college, credentials. And so that journey of just wanting, or that inner desire always of wanting more, that I wasn't going to settle, that there was more to
mm,
life than the struggle of being in poverty, or just trying to live. And there's times that has come again, but trying to live from paycheck to
mm,
paycheck, or depending on the system, not wanting to be a stereotype,
mm,
um or my children especially to be stereotypes, and that generational kind of
mm.
process. In that way, I wanted the generational process to be in a positive way, and my children to even do more because of me doing more.
No, I think that's a very commemorable, or commemorate you on doing that, taking that step, and I think that it's interesting how every different the decisions in our life can to change the trajectory, not of our own only of our own lives, but of our kids and our the people that come along after us. So as you now just said, hey, I'm going to make this change. You go to college, you get the certificate, which I can see on the back wall, which is awesome, and you grad, you come out of college and you got your first job. I think you said as a non-for-profit in Milwaukee. Is that right?
Actually, so yeah, so wait a minute. So there was a diploma, there was the GED, then there was a college degree, then the certificate. So,
Okay, there we
um,
go.
but when I graduated from college, I was actually, so I'm in the greater Milwaukee area, and there was a really renowned journalist with the daily newspaper, who columnist, who did a profile on me, of me being a single mother of three
Mm,
who graduated from college, and got off of welfare. That exposure from that article
mm,
opened doors for me professionally. At that time, I had already graduated, wasn't able to get a job right away. So I was doing work through temporary agencies.
mm,
And the supervisor I had for the assignment actually saw the article and came to me in a flurry,
mm,
like, how dare I be working in a bank with her when I should be working, working this temp jobs, clerical job, when I should be working somewhere
mm,
else. But she happened to be on the board of the organization that I ended up going, because she allowed, set up the opportunity for me to interview and get a job. So my first job out of college, my first real job out of college, was for a nonprofit.
Okay.
and that it wasn't what I went to school for. I went to school to become a broadcast journalist. That didn't work because,
Mm,
again, me being a single mother, just the need flexibility, schedule wise,
mm,
and just not having family support. But went and worked for a nonprofit and kind of got on that path of working for nonprofits and expanding those positions to include my communication skills. So, doing public relations
mm,
related activity for all the jobs that I pretty much had. Having then going on to work specifically communications wise,
mm,
including being a first communications officer for the health department in my city.
mm.
So, establishing that role and some other communication jobs. So, um, it it's been an interesting journey. I'll just say that professionally.
All good journeys are interesting, so that's awesome. So you were, you started out in the nonprofit, and I think we also talked a little bit about you did some side hustles. You were a journalist for a period of time as you were working
Print
for this non.
journalist, and yes, for about over 20 years, print journalist. So working with
Mm,
publications locally on a national level, having my work, my byline, because I love to write. So print journalism as my side hustle and just
mm.
as my labor of love because I love to write.
No, and I think that's cool that you got to. I think anybody that works for a nonprofit is kind of a fun mission, and you get to do that orientation. And journalism always just sounds fun. So it sounds like a fun journey on that part. So now you're doing that. You've done some of the side hustles. You've done the nonprofits. You did a few of them as you moved through. And I think when we talked about before, it was around 2016 or that you were going through the journey, and things slowed down, and you got laid off or whatnot. Is that kind of what motivated the next phase of the journey? How did that work for you?
And it wasn't even laid off. It was deeper than that. But so I lost a job
Mm,
for the first time ever. And it really traumatized me to the
mm,
point, again, going back to my history of being on welfare and, the financial struggles to lose
mm,
a job and to lose a job with no fault of my own. And actually, the
mm,
agency, shortly after I lost my job, they closed because of the
mm,
instability of the organization.
mm,
Um, but to lose a job and then to go for almost a year without having employment opportunities, where no matter what I was doing, wasn't even getting interviews. So I was Ubering for a while, trying to just make do financially,
mm,
doing whatever I could, but applying for jobs nonstop, not getting interviews, not getting any results. So
mm.
that led me to becoming an entrepreneur, to create a job for myself. Not that I ever had any dreams or aspirations or desires to be an entrepreneur, because remember, Devin,
Mm,
I've come from the background of being a single mother on welfare, so
mm.
having a paycheck every 2 weeks was important to me.
Hey, it's still. No, I don't think no matter where you're at, unless you just reach to the point that you could retire every week, every paycheck's always important to me. So I'm right there
Well,
with you. But I
right,
get what you're
but
saying.
having a knowing that, and it
Mm,
wasn't my responsibility, it wasn't on me. All I had to do was show up every
mm,
day and do my job. Then that paycheck would be there every 2 weeks. That was the mindset I
mm.
was always in, never in the mindset of being an entrepreneur and being the one who makes that money happen. So
No,
I
and
had to.
I completely, and the interesting thing is, I think no matter what your journey is or what phase of life, it's always scary to jump out from having that consistent paycheck to going out and doing something. And it can be more rewarding. It can oftentimes be more financially beneficial, but it's always that scary first step. And that's even when I talk with my wife, she's like, why, because I've been an entrepreneur, I've just always had that drive and want to do my own business. She's like, why can't you just be happy? Just go and work for someone else, just make a paycheck. And then, that's much easier. And you don't have to worry about employees and hiring and firing and all the things that you complain to me about. And I'm like, but I love being an entrepreneur. And so I completely get where you're coming from.
It's that mixed bag because I tell my
Mm,
husband it's like the hardest I've ever worked, but the most fulfilling being an
mm,
entrepreneur, the most satisfying. The longer I've worked longer hours, it takes so much more, especially building and trying to grow my business. But it's the most satisfying ever, where
hmm.
I can see the impact of my efforts more. So.
No, and I agree. And the joke always goes, the best thing about being an entrepreneur is you get to choose which 80 hours you work a week. So
and they never end, but okay.
Exactly. So you're going through this, and you got laid off, or you got fired, or whatever you want to call it. But now you've applied, and you've taken the time. Frustrated. So how did you then kind of arrive at saying, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to do my own thing, and this is what I'm going to do. Kind of how did you finally come to that decision and get that going?
Yeah, I like how you included the word finally, because it took a while for me to figure it out.
Mm,
I had the job loss in July of 26. No, I'm sorry, in October of 2016. So the fall of 2016, I had the
mm,
job loss. I didn't start my business until the July of 2017, so almost a year. Um, Again, I was Ubering. That wasn't enough money and actually was costing me more money than
mm,
actually that I could really benefit from. Um, but it was just not having any other options. Really,
mm,
it was this one day, my husband actually shared a quote with me. And so I'm big on quotes and inspiration and
mm,
affirmations and all of that. He shared this quote with me by A.G. Gaston,
mm,
and is find a need and fill it. Successful businesses are found on the needs of people, of the people. So for whatever reason, when he said that quote, it just
mm.
clicked. It's like I looked at him and I'm like, we're starting a business. Can I? Are you okay with me doing this? Like, do I have your permission? Are you on board? Like, and I remember just that whole process of even going through and the paperwork and just really plotting it out, not having a clue though what I was going to do exactly or fully, even where
Mm,
I'm at now and where I'm at with my business now. I never envisioned back then, but it
mm,
was like, okay, I have to do something. What can I
mm,
do to get some money going? And one of the things, so I was in the job seeker mode. So I was going and applying, I'm going to job networker groups, job
mm,
seeker networking groups. And people in those networking groups were seeing what I was doing on LinkedIn,
mm,
like leveraging the platform, using, because I was using the platform more because I needed a job. But
mm,
people were seeing what I was doing in those groups. And so after the groups, we would meet for coffee so that I could show them what to do, how to do what I was doing. And it just finally got to the point like, wait a minute, why am I not getting paid for this? Like,
mm,
I need to get more than coffee or tea or whatever afterwards, because they
mm.
would do it and go on and get jobs and do well and all of that. And I'm sitting still like,
I got my coffee.
well, I'm a tea drinker, but it
Uh,
is like I need to get paid for that. So I
mm,
started my business based on that and just more broader PR because that's my background, communications, and then zoned in on LinkedIn coaching and training because there's such a void in that. And so
mm.
many people just don't know how to leverage the platform. So that was it.
No, I think that's awesome. That's interesting how where your journey ends up of, hey, you start chatting with people, who start coaching them or giving them advice, and then you're saying, well, wait a minute. First of all, I got enough people to keep asking me, and second of all, I'm spending enough time. Why not turn it into a business? And I think that's awesome. So now, as you've started the business, you got into it, and you've growing it. How has it been? Has it been all up and has it been up and down, all up, all down? How's that journey been for you now that you've kind of decided this is the next part of your journey?
Roller coaster is what I say. And I don't even like roller coasters. I don't go to amusement parks. But it's been the up and down, up and
Mm,
I started my business like because I was broke, like shoestring, penny budget, really. If that. And
mm,
just on grit, really, is what I started my business on without even having business knowledge and skill and expertise and understanding.
mm,
I just started doing. So it's been a roller coaster going up and down and just trying to learn as I go along. And
mm,
every time I earn, money or you make money, I'm putting it in the business to grow it to get to the next level.
mm,
But it's been a journey, but I love it. It's like interesting. So COVID hit and it just okay, so February of 2020,
mm,
my most successful active like the business, it was like, yes, this is what I've been working for. This is what I've been trying to get the business to, where I had bookings throughout the month, trainings. I had published a book, so I had book events throughout the month as well.
Mm.
And then COVID hit and everything stopped. Like literally, like it was the first time I had bookings scheduled out in advance as well. And
Mm.
all of them, the flood of emails of cancellations and all of that. And so, that roller coaster, things were so high then and then go plummeted down. And then I
Mm.
had to just reinvent and then move things forward in a different way. But it's been a continual growth process, learning process.
No, and the way always used to use the roller coaster example as well. And then I had somebody that explained to me, and I thought it was a really good analogy. It's like they
Uh-oh.
were like, it's not really roller coaster. It's more like going all or to the theme park. He's like, you get it, you get in the parking lot, and you're all excited to go in, and you get your ticket, and you're all excited, and you go on the first a couple roller coasters, and you kind of get sick, so you have to take a break, and then you go eat a whole bunch of corn dogs, and then you go on the bumper cars and you get banged all around, but it's kind of fun and exciting, and then you go and you take a break and you spend some time and you're sitting on the bench and looking around, and then you go do it all again, and it's like, I'm like, that's actually a pretty good analogy. So that's the one I always still.
Okay. All right. I understand. I'm not an amusement park person, so that didn't dawn on me, but I understand it. I
All
see.
right. Well, now you'll have to go next time if you ever go to Disneyland, or the next time you go to an amusement park, then that will come to mind. So now you take, you pivoted, you've had to deal with COVID. So now you look and say, what's, the next 6-12 months, where do you think things are headed, or kind of what's the plan for as you continue to move on your journey?
Oh wow. So continue to grow. Like LinkedIn training, I don't see the need going away ever.
Mm.
And because again, people have a different perspective about LinkedIn, and a
Mm.
part of even why I do what I do and the approach that I have is from my experience when I was a job seeker.
Mm.
I didn't. So I say, if I had been using LinkedIn consistently before I lost my job,
Mm.
I would have gotten a job, I believe, relatively quick.
Mm.
But because I hadn't, I went on and started using the platform because I needed a job. But prior to that, I was absent. I was like Waldo, that character, that book character
Mm.
that, nobody could find me because I wasn't using the platform. So nobody knew about me.
Mm.
Nobody cared about me. Nobody, I'm on it, kind of knew. If I
Mm.
was using it consistently, people would have known. I wouldn't be an entrepreneur today, probably, because I probably would have got another job and would have just continued on the track I was.
Mm.
So I see the continued growth of my business based on LinkedIn continuing to grow, especially with the pandemic. We're in this virtual reality now for everyone.
Mm.
But yet people don't know how to show up and have their executive presence so that they shine and that they can generate results versus just having a profile and then not knowing how to strategically use the platform. So I see my business growing. I'm in the process of creating some online courses. So on demand
Mm.
courses, in addition to what I do with my virtual coaching and my virtual training in person. But the on demand courses is what's next for me and my business, TCM Communications.
Mm.
But who knows? I say I get the joy of being one of the joys of being an entrepreneur. I get these ideals in the middle of the night, which drive my husband crazy, or when I'm doing random things, and then I can just run with them. There's no limits to them because I'm the boss of me, right? So
Hey,
I'm
I'm
not.
right there, and I certainly resonate because because I have a few people on the marketing team, and they're always like, where you get all your ideas is when you go out in your morning runs and you listen to your podcast. You always come in and tell us all your new ideas that you want to implement. And I'm like, that's
Yes.
what I do. It's like there's a lot of truth to it, so it makes it fun wherever you get your ideas, but always be able to go and say, hey, I'm the boss. Now I get to implement them.
Right. And so there's no restrictions on that. So I never know what the future holds because the possibilities have yet not been developed for me. That stroke of genius or that great ideal is
Mm.
still to be developed for me or still to come. So who knows? I never thought I'd be doing what I do now,
Mm.
even 6 months ago. So who knows what the future holds? I just this is what I want to do the rest of my life. This is what I'm committed to. So
Mm,
I'm open for the possibilities.
that's awesome. Well, we could, I'm sure, chat all day, and we'd have a great time, but then people would start to drop off the podcast. So we'll start to wrap it up. But so I always end the podcast with two questions, so we'll jump to those now. So the
Uh-oh.
first question, first question I always ask is: so along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Oh my. There's been a lot of bad
Mm,
decisions I've made. But one of the worst that I truly learned from and is early on I had an opportunity to do an event,
mm,
a presentation for a very great client, and I underestimated the event where I really
mm,
didn't think it through on the front end to understand who the audience was and how I should facilitate that event. And so much to the point, and I'm publicly saying this, during my presentation, during my event, people got up, walked out in frustration.
mm,
So me not even reading the audience during the event and pivoting as I needed to respond to them, to keep them
mm,
engaged. But I dusted myself off and I learned from that
mm,
immediately. And now I'm the opposite. I give more than expected versus
mm.
less than what was expected,
No, absolutely.
Mhm.
Hey, no, that's a great lesson to learn. I think it's one that, whenever you get caught off guard or whenever something doesn't go right, rather than just crumple, you say, now what can I do to make sure that I avoid this and I'm better the next time? So I think that's a great
Yes,
attitude and certainly a good lesson to learn. So now we
yes.
jump to the second question, which is if you were to talk to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Okay, so I don't know if this is okay for me to say, and then I can move it to something else if you
As long
don't.
as it doesn't have any swear words so my kids can or listen to the show, then you're good.
Of course not. But I can't be in a conversation without talking about LinkedIn to the point
Okay.
where anyone thinking they want to be an entrepreneur at some point, or even they are now, to leverage LinkedIn. It's the one platform for professional and business purposes. Leverage
Mm,
the platform is my biggest thing. Sometimes I get clients who wait until they're at the point of frustration where they may have to close their business. And it's like,
mm,
no, you should have connected with me a long time ago. So making
mm,
sure that they're leveraging the platform and then guarding their time. So
mm,
making sure that they're not operating like they used to before they became an entrepreneur and
mm,
answering the phone whenever it calls, or going out and hanging out or whatever it is. You have to guard your time and your mental space and focus, zone in. It took me a while to get to that point, but I'm to the extreme now and people know, like, I'm all about my business. That's it.
mm. Hey, and I'm right there with you. I think both of those. I'm a LinkedIn disciple. I think it's a great platform. It's often underutilized, but it's also a great place to generate business, to make connections, to network,
Right.
everything. And I also like the guarding your time. I think that that's one time, even as an entrepreneur, a lot of times you have so many demands on your time that you have to be judicious about what you spend your time on because you're never going to have enough hours in the day to get everything done. So you have
Right.
to make sure that you prioritize. So both great piece of advice. Well,
Thank you.
as people want to now reach out to you, they want to have your assistants on LinkedIn, pick your brain, be a client. They want to work for you. They want to invest in you. They want to be your next best friend. Any or all of the above. What's the best way to connect with you?
Really? That's a question. LinkedIn, of course. They all they have to do is send me a connection invite and personalize it. So actually, Devin, if they
Mm,
send me a personalized connection invite and say that they heard this
mm.
podcast episode, I will send them a freebie. So
Oh,
I will send them a tip sheet in reference to how they can leverage LinkedIn if they mention this podcast. But
all right.
connecting
Even
with
better.
me,
Now they have even more motivation to reach out to you.
let's
Well,
see.
Well, perfect. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been fun. Now, for all of you listeners, if you have your own journey to tell, we'd love to have you on. So if you want to apply to be on the podcast, just go to inventivejourneyguest.com and apply to be on. If you're a listener, also make sure to click subscribe so you get notifications as all the new awesome episodes come out. And last but not least, if you ever need help with patents and trademarks, reach out to us at Miller IP Law by going to strategymeeting.com, and we're here to help. Thank you again. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of The Inventive Journey, make sure to go and check out Startups Magazine. They're an awesome magazine and podcast centered over in the UK. And if the magazine is a digital and print magazine where they focus on tech startups and entrepreneurs, and they also have a focus on female founders and women in tech. So if you want to check out their magazine, either digital or print, it's Startups Magazine, startups with an S, magazine.co.uk. And you can also look at their podcast, which is called The Serial Entrepreneur. So go check them out. They're awesome, and definitely if you like this episode, you'll like them.